Okay, so this is the second video for 2.1 functions. So before we talked about how a function, it has to have only one output for every input. So how you can tell if a graph is a function is by doing something we call a vertical line test, which means that if anywhere on the graph a vertical line can be drawn, and it has to be vertical, not horizontal, because a vertical has, every point on a vertical line has the same x. That passes through two or more points. So it hits two or more points. The graph is not a function. So go ahead and sketch these 6 that I have, and we're gonna really fast go through. So here I can see, I can obviously draw a vertical line here, and I hit 1 point, 2 points, so it's not a function. Here, no matter where I draw, it's only hitting 1 point, so this is a function. Here though, on my circle, if I draw, I'm hitting 2 points through my vertical line, so this would not be a function. This one, if I draw here 1 point, and even here, if I draw, remember your vertical line should be pretty skinny. You're only hitting 1 point on the vertical line. Has a weird curve, but you're only ever hitting 1 point still. So this would also be a yes. Parabolas you've worked with a lot, and they obviously are functions. And this is actually the graph of cosine, but no matter what I draw, where I draw my vertical line, I'm only touching 1 point. So yes, this is also a function. So only 2 that are not functions are the first one and the third one, where I can draw and I can see that I clearly touch 2 points. Okay, our second example, we're given a graph, and so we need to find, for a, f of 0, f of pi over 2, and f of negative pi. And this is actually the sine graph, and so it's the graph of f of x equals sine x. So f of 0, it's telling me my input, my x is 0, so what is y? Well, it's 0. F of pi over 2, it's telling me my input x is pi over 2, so what is my y? It's 1. And f of negative pi, my input is negative pi, so what is my y? Well, it's also 0. What's the domain of f? Well, I don't have arrows, so it looks like I'm stopping right here and right here, which means that my domain, my x's, are only going from negative 2 pi to 2 pi. Okay, so you can write that in set notation as x is between negative 2 pi and 2 pi. Or in interval notation, it would include negative 2 pi to 2 pi with the points included, so they're in brackets. What's the range? Well, my y values, the highest y values are at 1, and the lowest y values are at negative 1. So my y's only go from negative 1 to 1. So in set notation, it'd be y, and y is going from negative 1 to 1. Or in interval notation, it would be negative 1 to 1. List my intercepts. Well, my intercepts, okay, are where they cross the various axes. So my y-intercept, I only have 1, and it's at 0, 0. But I have a lot of x-intercepts. So I'm going to list all the ones that are in the domain here. And that's negative 2, 0, negative pi 0, 0, 0, pi 0, and 2 pi 0. So negative 2 pi 0, 0, 0, Oh, I skipped negative pi 0. Pi 0. And 2 pi 0. All where they cross the x-axis. So now how often does the line y equals 1/2 intersect the graph? So if I were here and I drew a horizontal line for y equals 1/2, I want to count how many times it crosses. Well, it crosses here, once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. So it crosses 4 times. And for what values of x is f of x equal to negative 1? So really it's asking when is y negative 1? So y is negative 1 at negative pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2. So it's when x is equal to negative pi over 2 and 3 pi over 2. And the last question, for what values of x is f of x greater than 0? Well, that's asking when the graph goes above the x-axis, when all the y's are greater than 0. So that means it's above the x-axis. Or you're saying all y greater than 0. So that happens on this part right here, which goes from negative 2 pi to negative pi, and also from 0 to pi. So your interval would be negative 2 pi to pi, and 0 to pi. And that concludes this example. Make sure you have all of this in your notebook so you can pause if you need more time to write. And we're going to move on to our last example. Here we are obtaining info about the graph of a function. So we have a function. Here it's going to be f of x is equal to x over x plus 2. It's the function we're working with. And I want to know what points are on the graph and what I can tell about the graph. So is the point 1 1/2 on the graph? Well, I can figure that out by plugging in 1 and finding out what f of 1 would be. Will that be 1 over 1 plus 2? Which is 1/3, actually not 1. So the point when x is 1 and y is 1/3 would be on the graph, not 1 1/2. So this would be a no. If x equals negative 1, what is f of x and what's the point? Well, that's similar to the first question. So I'm going to find when x is negative 1, so I want f of negative 1 will be negative 1 over negative 1 plus 2, which is negative 1 over 1, which is a negative 1. So f of negative 1 equals negative 1. So that would mean the point would be negative 1, negative 1, where x is negative 1 and y is negative 1. And that would be on the graph. And now if x is 2, if f of x is 2, what is x? So it's saying like y is 2, what is x? So I need to solve for x. So I have 2 equals x over x plus 2. So I don't want it to be rational, so I'm going to multiply both sides by x plus 2. And that gives me 2x plus 4 equals x, which then if I can subtract x, subtract 4, I get x equals negative 4. So x equals negative 4 when f of x equals 2, which means the point negative 4, 2 would also be on the graph. And it doesn't ask this, and this isn't quite in this part, but if I wanted to know the domain here, well, we talked about this earlier. What's my restrictions? I can't have a 0 as my denominator, so this rational expression would have a domain where x cannot equal negative 2. So that's just kind of a little review there. Okay, so you guys go ahead and complete the practice assignment, which is going to be page 96 to 100. Might not start on 96. And you're going to do problems number 47, 49, 51. And 53, 55, and 61. as a practice assignment in your notebook. So do them in your notebook with these notes. That's not your homework. Your homework, the sub has and will post, and I'm gonna post also on School Loop under an assignment. Okay, so go ahead and get that done. Have fun. See you later.